big and small. And we are facing the unavoidable challenge of maintaining business continuity while first and foremost being mindful of the well-being of our employees and our colleagues. I want to call your attention to the hashtag in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, hashtag human first, technology second. And I want you to know that these are not just words on a page or a cute little marketing spin. This is a philosophy that lies at the very core of who we are at New Horizons and what we passionately believe in. I hope that this webinar and this entire series that we've done this week reflects the human side of the technology that we're all going to need in order for us to remain connected as community, as colleagues, and as neighbors. And so with that, I'd like to welcome you to collaborating with Microsoft Teams. Our presenter is Bobby Garrity. Bobby is a multi-award-winning New Horizons instructor. She is the Meryl Streep of New Horizons, as well as a top facilitator in our Center for Leadership and Development program. It is always a joy for me to watch Bobby present. And so with that, Bobby, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. The Meryl Streep of New Horizons. Now that's a new introduction I've not yet heard before. Happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to host you for this webinar on Microsoft Teams and to share the benefits and a brief overview of some of the tools that you can use in this environment. Some of you are new to this, some of you have used it or dabbled in it a little bit. And although I've been teaching for a really long time, this is a very critical time that we're in, and we're seeing a lot more that are needing to learn how to manage their teams remotely and still retain that cohesiveness with their teams and stay connected and continue to be productive. So my hope is that at the end of the session, you'll feel a little more comfortable with just navigating. I am Bobby Garrity, and I have been teaching with New Horizons for 13 years. I teach all the Microsoft Office suite as well as all of the business skills. And although I've been teaching for a long time, this one, as I said, this one's become a lot more popular because we have to find a way to become more connected and sort of streamline some of those processes as we are located in many different areas in some cases. So I think that this will help you a lot just to get your feet wet and get you a little bit acclimated to the environment. Thank you again for joining me. Let me show you my objectives for you. So Microsoft Teams is a different way to collaborate, and I'll show you different ways that we can chat with our team members, as well as I've got on here changing the channels without a remote. What in the world is a channel within the Teams environment, and how can we utilize those to connect with our team? What I'm going to do, I'll also show you, of course, how to work with the video conferencing within your teams. What I plan to do is to demo some of the tools and explain the benefits to you so that you get a feel for the functionality. So I'm going to toggle between my slide deck and in the actual Teams environment so that you get a glimpse of the user experience. So what exactly is Teams? For those of you that are brand new to it, I call it a one-stop shop. It's a collaborative cloud-based workspace. It is a unified communication platform that basically combines the ability to have persistent chats, video meetings, file storage, and file collaboration, which is a huge piece of that. We can collaborate real time in our files without having 10 different versions out there and never know exactly where they all are, trying to merge them. And then also how we can use application integration so that everything is kind of at our fingertips, a one-stop shop. So one of the things you'll want to know about Teams is that you can make it either public or private. You can have an org-wide team where you're pushing out information and having announcements made, what have you. You can also make them private for just certain eyes only. They can also be internal or external. You can invite external folks is what I'm saying. Each team has access to multiple channels, which I'll talk to you more about. Those are sort of like virtual places that you can meet, different conversation buckets. And then just an interesting fact, as of last month, March 2020, Teams has over 44 million daily users, much in part due to the current pandemic that we're in. So you can imagine that there's a massive uptick in the usage. And a lot of us are used to sitting around in a conference room, around a table, and passing out sort of paper copies during our meetings. So we're just moving all of that in some cases to the virtual environment. So let me show you, I told you I would toggle between the slide deck and the actual environment. So this is just a practice environment that I've created for you to get an idea of what this looks like. I have created multiple teams in my Teams environment. By the way, I'm just on the Office 365 on my trial account. Using the waffle, I can see all of my Microsoft pieces. I happen to be, of course, today in Teams. So in the Teams environment, I've created a New Horizons training, a product launch, HR, IT. Those are sort of the buckets I mentioned that you can have within the Teams environment. So underneath that, we have channels. I'll talk about that next. So within my virtual teams that I've created, let me show you how I would create a team from scratch. On the bottom left corner, this is where I could join or create a team. Once I click on that, I have the ability here to create a brand new team from scratch. We were playing in this yesterday because I taught teams, so you'll see kind of a playground from yesterday. I can build a team from scratch, or I can pull in from a group that I've already created in Microsoft Outlook. For this one, I'm just going to build a team from scratch and just walk you through what this looks like. I can make this one either private or public. I'm going to make it private. You have to have permission to join this one. Many of yours would be private as well. My team name is going to be Bobby's team. And I could do a description there if I wanted to. I'm going to move right along, though. This is just a brief overview. They're proud of me. Look at that. Nice work. Good job, Bobby. And this is where I can then add whatever team members I want to. And this pulls from your internal database of users. I'll just add 2 here so you see what this looks like. If I could spell right, it would be better, wouldn't it? Once I've added those, I'm going to add them. And I have the ability to make them a member or an owner. An owner has full rights. A member, of course, has some limited rights in what they can do and use and delete, etc. I'm going to close that back out. And you'll there see my Bobby's team that's listed there. So that's how you create a team. Once you've created the team, then you have the ability to, underneath that, have different channels of conversation. You're given one channel by default. It's called the general channel, and you can do nothing with that one. It's there. You can't delete it. You can't. It's going to be sort of the complimentary get you started conversation. So the standard channels are for your conversations that everybody in a team that's invited to that team can participate in. If it's a private team, they are not able to see anything, as you can imagine, in the channels. So they're like a virtual location. Think of it as like a conference room where your team would work or play, and everybody can have discussions. We can post messages. We can include files that we want to share within that. And you can invite somebody into a particular channel. They get to see a full history of that channel. So think of that benefit. If somebody joins my project team, normally I'd have to get sort of include them on a new distribution list in my email, try to catch them up and forward them all the old emails. Whereas if I add them to this team, my project team, I can bring them into the channel and they can read the full history of everything and kind of get up to speed on where we are in that project. So it's really very useful for cut down on volume of email. I would think everybody here would agree that it's sort of death by email these days. It's email overload, it's information overload. So part of the benefit of this is moving us from all of those massive emails where everybody's replying to all, and just see it in one common thread within that channel and be able to keep up with where we are as a team. Another thing I'll mention to you about channels and teams is less is more. You will certainly, and I'll remind you of this later, you'll certainly want to have some governance over this. It can get out of hand very quickly, as you can imagine. So your internal folks will want to sort of govern who can make these teams and channels so that it doesn't get too out of hand. But this is going to give you many benefits as you see here within the channels. So I'm going to toggle over to my environment underneath my New Horizons training. This is what I played with yesterday. There's my general default channel that it comes with. I can add others, which I have underneath some of these others to give you some general ideas of logical channels that you might have underneath those buckets of teams. HR may have a performance review, recruiting, and training, those topics of conversation. If I want to create a brand new channel, by the way, I'll click beside my New Horizons training on this ellipsis, and you can see some other options there to manage the team. I may want to change somebody from a member to an owner or vice versa. I can add a channel here, which I'll do. There's the privacy. It is standard at the moment, but within the team, everybody I've invited, I could still make this channel private. So within my big bucket of HR team, I can have some private conversations and only invite a couple of folks too. I'm going to keep that one standard, and I'll add that channel, and you'll see that come in underneath the New Horizons training. So within those channels, you have multiple, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to toggle away from that so quickly. That's what this looks like underneath general, I have a new channel. So within those channels, every new team has a channel named general. You just saw that. And in each of my channels, I have 3 tabs at the top by default. I have conversations where we can post conversation thread. I have files that are stored, and I have a wiki tab. Let me show you what these look like. Here they are. In my general channel, there are my 3 tabs. I'm in posts, which is where the whole team has their conversations, right? Just the typical chat, what you're used to, a normal chat thread down at the bottom, which has a multitude of options, including text, of course, my attachment. We've got some fun things because I told you this is where your team could work or play. So we have some emoticons and some GIFs so you can kind of banter a bit with your team. Those are fun. You also have a video camera, which I'll talk more about in just a minute. Well, now I can't get the GIF to go away. I guess we're just going to play today. So those are our posts, and this is where if I were to join the team, you were to bring me in, I can go back at any point and catch up on these, which is really, really nice. A one-stop, one view, one place to view all of your posts. So that's what those look like. The 3 tabs are by default. The second tab outside of just the conversation thread is the file tab. Within the file tab, you can add, like you would anywhere else, you can add files here. And this step will look a little different depending on where you're adding the file from. But basically, you can still use your drag and drop that we love and use all the time. You can drag and drop into this file area. You can also click on open from the top and bring it in that way. This is a really popular thing to use within the team's environment is the files, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we have this challenge all the time, especially if we're working remotely with these different versions of our files floating around. Even with the SharePoint, we check them out, we have different versions. It creates these challenges. So the nice thing about working underneath the team in the general channel in our files tab is it's going to list every file that has anything to do pertaining to our team. In my real world, in my instructor team at New Horizons, we have an instructor channel where we have conversations and sort of collaborate. And we have all of our files here that we may use, that we can share back and forth and we can collaborate on. So I've listed a few in here. I have the ability to upload it. As I mentioned, I can drag and drop, same things that you're used to using all the time. I'm going to go back for just a second to my posts, which is where we have our conversations with our team. What I could do as well, guys, is using my paperclip, I can grab a file from here. I did this yesterday when I was teaching class. I grabbed a file, I put it in the conversation. It's called subtotal. What happens is when I attach it here in the conversation thread, it is automatically put in the files tab. So It uploads automatically. It's synced together with anybody who works with it. So for example, if I open this Word document called Chapter 1, we're all on a team, all 1,000 of us. There's a lot of you today. We're working on this simultaneously. I actually do have this open with 2 other of my practice accounts just so you can see how this behaves. I'm able to see, if I go to edit this guy, I'm able to see everybody that's currently in this file. So if I go in here and I want to make something bold or red or what have you, I can see who is in here and who is working and what changes are being made. Give that a second to load and you'll see it. I have a user that just turned introduction red. It's this student right here. So I know who's in the file. We can work collaboratively. I could say to you, let's meet in this file tomorrow at 1 o'clock and let's work on it. So it is real time. I can tell who's in the file, and this is a huge benefit for Microsoft Teams. Any changes we make, of course, are stored there in the Teams environment. I can edit this right here in my browser. I certainly could download a copy of it. Now, if I download a copy, it's going to break that syncing within the cloud. But if we edit it here or we open it in our desktop version here, open in desktop app, where I have the full version with the full ribbon, it still is going to be synced here in my Teams. That's an important piece for you to think about. So whether I edit it here with this sort of mini ribbon, not much here to work with, or I open it in my desktop app, I still will have it synced here in my Teams environment. I've opened a chat on the side as well. So me and my buddy, who are both working simultaneously, we can open the chat pod. We can have a conversation about this file while we're working on it. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the Teams environment. This is how I navigate back. I'll always just click on the Teams icon. Give it a second and it'll pop back over there for you. So that's how the files work. The third tab at the top, we had a conversation thread. We have files. We also have a wiki tab by default. You don't have to use it. You could get rid of it, but it's there by default. Wiki is sort of like, it reminds me a lot of OneNote. Some of you are familiar with working in OneNote where you have sections and you have pages and it's just a way to organize your notes within the team. That's exactly what this is. So you have pages and sections and text that you can add. Maybe it's a project team and you guys want to just create some basic notes. It's fairly rudimentary, but it works none the same. It's basically just a way to create your notes. So here's where it is, what it looks like. Third tab is Wiki. My Wiki page has, I have Project A, a couple of tasks, resources, and notes. That's essentially what that is. If I didn't want that, I certainly could rename it or remove it. So that's the Wiki. Those are your 3 tabs that come in on every channel within your team, and you can continue to expand on that for different buckets of conversation that you need, maybe 3 new tabs, etc. So let me expand on a couple of other things that you can do here within the Teams environment. You also have the ability, because we may have, 50 people in my organization that are working on a team, I need to get somebody's attention. So I can use the @ sign, the @ mention, and pull in somebody's name, and that gives me the ability to sort of get their attention. It's going to give them a pop-up notification, just as if they were getting a brand new email. So you could do this for announcements, you could do this for a particular person, etc. The way I would do this is at the very top of this channel, I would put my @ sign and call in a person. I'm going to grab student 5. Type in my message and send it over. That person again gets a notification that I've called that to their attention. So imagine, I know what some of you are thinking. I can read your mind. I've taught this for a long time. Some of you are thinking, okay, so now I have to watch all my emails and all of my teams. Anybody thinking that? There's a lot going on now. And although it's to streamline the process, and after we have some behavior changes, we can move some of that conversation over to Teams. But I still, in my morning, need to open this and know what I've missed, right? Who's mentioned me? What's my activity I've missed? So This is created, it honestly works a bit like a social media, like a Facebook. So in my morning, when I need to find out who has called my attention to something or what's going on while I've been away, there is an activities tab on the top left where somebody's mentioned me or something's gone on in my teams that I need to be aware of. In my activity feed, I can see anything that pertains to me that I've missed, and it'll come in just like an unread message. It will be bold until I click on it and acknowledge it. So that's the first place I go in the morning, is to my activity to see what has happened that I've missed. That will always stay fresh. As I click on them, they are no longer bolded, just like an email. And as I click on them, they take me to that area where I was mentioned, so I can sort of see the context of it. Within that activity feed, I certainly can filter, just like you could search or filter anywhere else in Microsoft. I can do that here as well. I could filter something specific that I'm looking for. I'm going to go back to the Teams environment. That was just one that I wanted to make sure you got, is that you could use an @ sign to be able to mention somebody and grab their attention. So there's where I would acknowledge my activity. I just showed you this. It's on the top icon of the sidebar, my activity. The next thing I want to show you is you also have the ability, it's sort of a shortcut cheat sheet. It's a / command that you can use in the search bar that gives you additional options, sort of Microsoft's cheat sheet. Here's how it works. In my search bar, I'll just put in a /. That's all I'm going to put, just a /, and you'll see in the drop down there are lots of goodies. One of the ones that's important is I can mark my status. It's a quick way, a shortcut to mark my status, as I'm away. And you can see there in my profile that I'm marked as away. So that's just a quick shortcut for you to be aware. So that would mark my status. That's not the only way, but that's a quick way to do it. In addition to using the / and marking my profile there, or my status from my profile, the other place that I can do that is in my profile setting itself. So the way that this works is on the top right corner with my bubble, with my profile. There are several options here, one of them being, it's a simple thing, but it's just good to know that I can mark my status here. Okay. Another thing I wanted to point out to you is within the busyness of all of the conversation threads in my teams, there are going to be moments that I need to save a message. Just like you would flag a message in your inbox, I may want to flag a message here in that I need to follow up on or come back to at a later time. So to be able to save a message, I just hover over the one that I'd like to save. Maybe somebody needs to schedule a meeting here, so I need to pay attention to that one. There's an ellipsis here by that particular conversation piece, and I have the ability here, among others, to save this message so I can go back to it and pay attention later. After I save the message or flag it, the way that I would go back and view that is in my profile, the bubble. There is a saved message area. When I click on my saved messages, it's going to show me a whole list of those that I've flagged. Give that a second. It's coming up. There's a little bit of a lag. So I may have a whole host of these. They're flagged messages that I can go back and review. The way that I get rid of those when I'm ready is just click on the flag itself, the little tag, and it will disappear. That tells Teams that I have taken care of that business. Okay? The other thing that you have in your status that's available to you, again, is just keyboard shortcuts. Not a big deal, but I like to show you this one as well. There's a whole host of these also under your profile bubble. Some of you like the keyboard shortcuts in Microsoft in general, so here are the cheat sheets here from within Microsoft Teams. Keyboard shortcuts, I won't go through these. I'm just showing you where they live. There's a bunch of them. They're really, really good. You won't memorize all of them, but you'll have a few go-tos just to quickly navigate around the environment to streamline the process of your day while you're working. That's found in the profile. One of the other things you'll want to think about is notifications, because I told you get a notification if somebody mentions you, but there are other times when you want to control the notifications. Do you want to receive an email about something? Do you want to receive just a little icon that comes up in the corner? Are those things making you crazy and you want to turn some off? Here's where they live. Also in the bubble, there's a lot up there, a lot of goodies in the profile. There is settings. When I click on the gear for settings, it's going to take me into all of the settings, but the one that matters to me right now are my notifications. There's some privacy options there as well, but the one that I want is this one. When I look at my notifications, it shows me everything from mentions to messages, etc. And you can tell it if you want a banner that shows up in the bottom right corner, or if you want to be emailed about that when there's a particular notification that comes in. There are several there. So if you have one that's making you crazy, you can turn it off, or if you're missing some information you need to be notified on, you can turn those on. These are your choices in the drop down. Good. So that's changing your team setting or your notification. I showed you a second ago a search within Teams, but this is fairly important because they're just like anywhere else in Microsoft. There are things I need to extract and pull up. So you can search in your Teams for anything that you have missed. If I want to search in my Teams, I can search for at the very top. I'm going to search for Bobby. Once it pulls up all the information on Bobby, it's going to be a lot, right? A little too much. Everything comes up on the left. Everything Bobby's done from the beginning. So within that search criteria, the results, I have the ability there to filter those results, to streamline that process a bit. I can filter for a particular subject, just like you would in your email, right? This is very similar. I can tell it to look in a particular channel or in a particular team, all my app mentions, or something that has an attachment. So there are many ways to narrow down that criteria within your searches. Now, I'd like to talk to you for a moment about having meetings within your teams. There are times when you and I are having within our team a lot of activity, a lot of busyness, a lot of conversation. It gets a little convoluted, we're confused, and I decide we're best suited to just call a quick meeting, right? So we all need to jump on the video camera, call a quick meeting. It is natural and improved. My slide says that Skype for Business is to become Teams. So Skype is end of life. It is retiring in July of 2021. A lot of you are in the midst of migrating, and maybe you're using both for a little while, but we will be moving to Teams. So Teams has really all the functionality that you know and love from Skype, but new and improved. It's definitely a bump up from what you're used to, but still super user-friendly. So if I decide that I want to initiate a meeting now, I could certainly schedule a meeting for the future, but if I want to initiate one now, you can be in the chat box at the bottom of your post in your channel, and you can determine that you want to call a quick meeting. So you would click on the video camera and prompt it to come up with a quick meeting for your team. Now, I was having some challenges with this earlier, so I won't wrestle with it, but I do have two profiles. Yes.
Just want to let you know, maybe we should turn off the webcam. We're out of sync a little bit, so it might be easier for the latency issues.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Thank you for letting me know. So let me show you. I'll pull my other profile on because the first one was not behaving for me earlier to pull in a meeting. So I'm going to pull in a second playground that I've worked with. And this is where I would call a meet now. Give that just a moment. I'm going to continue without audio or video because that'll mess up what I'm doing with you right this minute. But I'm going to tell you what it would look like, or show you what it would look like if I were to call a quick meeting. Here's my meet now. I could turn on my audio, my camera. I could schedule a meeting for later, but for here, I want to meet now. What it does is it opens a meeting and it shows everybody that's attending in the bubble with their profile. I have my audio and my camera here listed. I also have the ability to do a screen share, but the only thing you want to know about that is I can only screen share if I'm in the desktop app. It won't let me screen share if I'm on the web app. I also could pull in, there's everybody that's attending my meeting. I also could pull in a chat box where we could have a conversation. So this is just very user-friendly. The thing that you want to know that's interesting about this is with the ellipsis, I could actually start recording this meeting. And if there were some of my team members who weren't able to attend the meeting, once I record it and stop the meeting, it will actually be stored in that conversation channel so that later on the team can come back and pick up that meeting recording, which is super cool. If they don't have permission to be in the team, they will not obviously have permission to view that recording. I also can show meeting notes as the presenter, take notes. I do want to show you this because it has a cool feature as well. Once I turn on my notes and I take some notes, these are my really cool notes. There you go. I'm going to end the call. Give that a moment. I'm going to dismiss that. It will give me a meeting notes as a tab at the top of my channel. So every time I have a meeting, my meeting notes will be at the top. I don't have to go dig for those or try to find a way to send them out to my team. They're just listed there in the channel automatically. The recording that I created for that meeting, and I'm going to toggle this over actually back to the other one because I did record one yesterday. It will be found here in the channel where, again, your team can go back and review that. Now, Microsoft Teams is working on transcribing those meetings as well. That's a good thing to know. It's up and coming. If it may already be here. You know how it's always changing constantly. That we're working on being able to transcribe the meetings. That way, if I miss the meeting, I don't have to scrub through the whole recording. I can actually go back, look at the transcription, even do a search for where my name was mentioned within the meeting, something that pertains to me. So you can see where that is certainly kind of new and improved version of being able to use my my meetings outside of just Skype. So that's my meeting now. The other thing, just a couple of other things that I want to mention to you as we get ready to wrap up. Lastly, you can also add additional apps here at the top. I told you you get 3 tabs by default, but there is a plus sign where you could customize this channel to suit the needs of your team. Now this one's misbehaving. There we go. So there's my add tab, and you can see there are a whole host of tabs that you can use. Everything from Microsoft, creating forms. Our meetings are stored in Stream, so that's for your videos, and a multitude of others. So lots of great apps that your team can utilize, and you can add those as tabs at the top as you wish. So that's how that works. You also have chats on the left side underneath activity. This is just the same chat that you would be familiar with. I have the ability to chat with an individual or with a few different people, just as you would be familiar with. I think you guys know how to chat, but I can invite additional people to this chat and incorporate them here. So these are the private individual chats, like an instant message, that are outside of the team, and they are stored here, just your own personal conversations. Now, a couple of final tips. You will want to certainly, I mentioned this to you earlier, but it's so important that you within your organization will have some governance, policy, compliance, security, determine who can create or delete teams or channels, think about the roles to consider within the team's environment. And as you can imagine, just like anything else, it is a behavior change. It is thinking about how to incorporate the behavior change within your team. And we're so conditioned with email overload. It just takes some time to encourage folks to move from email, so much email into Teams. It's a living organism. It will change. It will expand with your organization. You'll want to use champions to drive it and sustain the usage. You also have a mobile app. I love mine, a Teams mobile app. so that if you're away from your machine, your computer, you can actually do everything that you would do here. So that gives you just a brief overview. I know this was a marathon session. I know there are probably a million questions you would have. It's not designed to be a full day's training. We do teach this in a full day. This is designed from me to you to get your feet wet and get you acclimated to the environment, give you a basic idea of what it will do, and hopefully just make it less scary. We do have the full day if you want to expand on any of those. But as you can see, just from the little bit I showed you, it is a really great way, a great avenue, a great environment to be able to share and collaborate with your team, work on files together, have conversations, take notes, have chats, and call quick meetings. Now, just so you know, New Horizons has been teaching virtually for a really long time. Many of you are new to this, and it's a little bit crazy to be teaching from home with kids running around in the background. I remember that first time I taught at home, it just felt so bizarre. We've been doing this for a really long time, and we have honed in on our skills of teaching virtually. We are all trained to teach face-to-face, virtually. We do dedicated classes. And the Center for Leadership and Development course has nearly 50 to 60 post-class resources, which is something that really sets us apart as New Horizons, is we don't give you a class and cut you loose and set you free. We actually follow up. We make sure that you have post-class resources, plenty of things, takeaways to continue to practice and to guide you in some of the topics that we teach you, whether it's Microsoft Business Skills, tech, what have you. So I have loved hanging out with you today, and I appreciate so much you giving me the opportunity, giving me your hour to let me just show you around a little bit in Teams, and I hope that that was very helpful. I'm going to turn it back over to my folks, and you guys can ask any questions that you have for me.
Thank you so much, Bobby. I appreciate that. We do have a slew of questions coming in, so so I'll give everyone a minute to continue typing in those questions. Just wanted to say, like Bobby said, this is just a small taste of what we offer here at New Horizons. So please locate your local center to find out more details and find what courses are available to you. As we also mentioned earlier, that this is a fourth session in the week-long series. We have another great one tomorrow, also with Bobby. So please go on to newhorizons.com/empower to sign up for that one last session about collaborating in Microsoft Teams, Office Teams 365. Now, a recording, just as a reminder, will be sent out to everyone. I know there were a lot of folks who wanted to join us today. So that'll be sent out to you to review, share with those who couldn't join us, and also to hand off to others that you think might find this very useful. So I'm going to dive in with the questions here, Bobby, okay? Quite a few coming in here, and folks, we'll try to go through all of them, as many as we can here. The first question is, and I'm not sure if you had gone over notifications or not during the demo, but the person asked, they wanted to know about turning on notifications and what the impact of notifications are, what the notifications look like, etc. within Teams. So my thought is probably when someone posts something, will someone get an alert or a notification? Things like that should let them know that something is there.
Mayan, you're exactly right. Where the notifications live in your profile that I showed that location, you have control over setting those notifications. And yes, they come in just like you're used to when you receive a new email. They come in as a banner in the bottom right corner. If you choose, if that's what you want, a banner is the bottom right corner, just a little icon showing you that you've received a notification. Also the email, of course, you can prompt it to send you an actual email.
Great. Another question that came in, and this is something I just recently learned about Teams, is how can we utilize Microsoft Teams to collaborate with those outside of the organization, such as vendors, friends, or people that contractors, how can we set those up?
That's a great question. So you do have the ability to pull in somebody from the outside, depending on your organization, if they have that enabled or not. Everything will depend on that. But if you have it set to a private team, for example, and you would invite in one vendor, you'll want to be careful with how many you invite in, of course, and who you invite in, because they can see everything that's on the team. But you just invite them, and as long as they have a Microsoft 365 account, they have the ability to join that team.
Great. Another question is in regards to the video conferencing capabilities. Do participants in a video conference have the ability to zoom in and out of the presentation being shared by the presenter?
Not that I know of at the moment. As I share my screen, that's exactly as you see it. I don't think we have the Zoom capabilities.
Okay, and just piggybacking off the same this question is, what about during a video conference? How many other people can you see? I guess that's more of, as long as someone's has their video on. Is that fair?
Yes, it's going to show up as the bubbles with their profile if their video is off. If their video camera's on, then you, of course, see their full face in that small bubble. You will see 4 of those by default, 4 bubbles, and it'll be the 4 most recent speakers.
Great. And the last part of this question is, can you talk a little bit about the presenter modes and what is and can be seen by the presenter and the video conference participants?
Sure. So when I'm in presenter mode, as long as I'm sharing from my desktop version, I cannot do this from the web browser. But when I'm in the desktop version, I have the ability to share my screen, and it will be just as you guys saw with mine today. I can show the full screen, my desktop, and whatever I show on that desktop, that's exactly what will be displayed on your side.
Great. This is also a really good question. What is the difference between, or how is Microsoft Teams different from SharePoint?
It's a good question. So it's very similar. You just have really some increased, I think it's more user-friendly. I also have the ability to record those meetings, and they are stored in the conversation channel so that everybody that had permission to see the channel has the ability to go back and review that recording. That's the main difference. You also have a whiteboard that you can work with in Microsoft Teams within the meetings.
Wonderful. Can you go over a little bit the difference between members and owners? An example the person had put into the question is, can a member add content versus an owner only?
Sure. So an owner has full rights to do anything they want to do. They can add or remove anybody, anything, channels, what have you. A member is going to have limited rights of things that they can delete. For what, that's the main example. I don't want all of my members going in deleting things that shouldn't be deleted. So it gives them some limited capabilities of them being able to add others. I don't want them bringing in vendors or customers that wasn't approved by the owner. So owners have full capabilities, members will have limited.
Great. And do you know if there's an ability to create sub-teams within a Teams channel?
There is, and it took a while for Teams to do this, and it was a big complaint. We wanted the ability to make some of those channels private, and they have enabled that now. So as I create a channel and I invite others, I can determine that that particular channel is private only to 3 people of the team of 7, and only those 3 people can see the private channel. Yes.
Great. This question is about after creating a channel. Can you rename the channel after it's been created, or do you have to delete it and then recreate it with a new name and members?
Great question. You can rename a channel. You just right-click on the ellipsis, and you have the ability to rename it.
Great. Another question came in, and hopefully I'm asking this correctly. How can you restrict users from creating a team without breaking everything else?
That's a great question too, and that's really an IT question. There will be admins within your organization that will have many more controls over restricting and governing what can and can't be done. A lot of that's going to be up to your IT department.
Great. And this next question kind of ties back to adding vendors and people outside the organization. This person says, it appears that I can only add people from my own enterprise on Teams. Can I add others using a Gmail or Yahoo or another third-party email account?
They will need to have an Office 365 account to join the team, and they'll have to be, it need to be turned on by the IT department, your admins.
Great. We have a lot of great questions coming in. I'm just kind of filtering through all of them here.
Good.
This one is about storage, I believe. It says, I assume files are all stored in the cloud. Can they be accessed by the owner from different computers, hardware, for example, computer, iPad, a different tablet? Is it across all different devices as well?
Yes, it is accessible with all of the devices that you just mentioned. And when I have these files that are stored here in my team, they are also creating a SharePoint site on the back end. You don't have to do anything to make that happen. They automatically show up. I know that's mind-blowing. I know it is, because some of you are going, wait, what? But what that does is it will automatically create a SharePoint site on the back end that mirrors all of your teams and the files that you've created here. So in my general channel here in New Horizons Training, all of these files are also stored on the back end on my SharePoint site. So they're automatically created. I don't have to do anything to do that. So if I've organized them here in my teams and channels, it's automatically going to be organized on the SharePoint site on the back end. If I can click on this, I'll show it to you. Got a little bit of a lag on mine. Go ahead and ask another one. I'll continue to navigate to this.
Not a problem. The next question is, I know that Teams is very collaborative. We can work in real time. Can more than one person be in a file at the same time? And if so, what changes get saved? Will someone's change on one thing override something else that someone else does?
Sure. So you saw earlier that I had 2 or 3 different students in a file at the same time, and I could see their little bubble. I could see who was in there working in which cell, for example, in Excel. The most recent change is the one that will be saved. Here's my SharePoint. I'll jump over to it. This is not a very good account. This is the one that I didn't work in today, but you still will be able to see where it lives. There's my SharePoint. There's my New Horizons training group. Those are my notes that I created within that. Don't think I have any files in this one. I have one. There's a chapter 1 file that I have within that team site. That's created on the SharePoint side automatically.
Great. This is actually a really interesting question. How is collaborating on a file within Teams different or better than collaborating via OneDrive?
If I have shared something with you on OneDrive, you and I can collaborate real time. It's exactly the same thing. This just gives me the ability to work in a full team so that multiple people can work on it exactly the same. Whatever changes we make are automatically saved to the file. So it's very similar to OneNote. OneNote is my personal drive of files. OneNote Teams is actually going to be just for a full team. Very similar.
Great. So this question is in regards to versions of different documents. Can old versions of a document be retrieved when you share it on Teams?
If I go to the SharePoint site, yes, it can. If I'm on SharePoint, I told you all the files are automatically stored back there. That SharePoint behaves the way you're used to. So I still could go into that file and I could actually retrieve an earlier version. Yes.
Great. And then another question that came in is when in regards to documents, if you create something outside of Teams, for example, on OneDrive, will it be able to be saved and accessed in Teams?
No, if I store it on my OneDrive, that is my eyes only. Anything in my OneDrive is my eyes only. I would have to share that out physically to you or move it to Teams for you to have access to it. This guy here. Good question.
Great. In regards to, with all the tools and collaboration that Microsoft Teams allows, is a subscription to Office 365 required?
Yes, it is.
And
the one I'm working on today is a 30-day trial account.
Awesome. And a question came up is for files, in regards to files, how do you delete them if you don't need them? Will others,
just like you, go ahead.
Sorry. Will others who have access to those files, once, say, I deleted something and you had access to it, will you still have access even though I have deleted it from my Teams?
Yes, if we delete it from this files tab, everybody loses the ability to see it. It's gone completely unless I've downloaded it to my machine.
Great. And we already talked a little bit about alerts, but are there alerts when it comes to having something changed on a document or a spreadsheet? We talked about alerts when something's posted and within the Teams channel, but what about changes to specific documents that are within the channel itself?
There is not that capability in Teams. If you're going to use it in that way, you'll want to open it kind of the old way you're used to working in it. On your desktop version of Word, you can go into track changes and you guys can work on it and you can see what's changed and by whom. In Teams, you can't see that.
Okay, great. This is talking about using the wikis. If you have multiple folders, do they display if you open the menu at the top left, or can you only create one? Not sure if that makes sense, or if I'm asking the question correctly there.
I don't know that I understand that one.
Let me try and get some clarification on that while we move on to the next one.
Sure.
It said the next question is, if someone wants to send a post to all team members, do they have to enter all of the names, or is there a built-in distribution list that you can use, or does everyone who is a member of that team's channel alerted?
That is such a great question. So the answer is yes, you can actually send something to the whole team. If I have somebody in my general channel and I want to send it to the whole team, I can click on the ellipsis and get an email address for it, pop that over into my Outlook email, and when I email it out, everybody gets it. Great question. Very good question.
Great. And
there's the email.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Do you know if Teams can be integrated within an Outlook calendar in terms of status and things like that?
Yes, it does. I have a calendar here on the left, and I can create, it's a limited version here. Really, I just can create meetings here, but I will see those in my Outlook calendar also.
And this is one of the basic questions, and I think it's a good one. Just to kind of highlight the difference between a member and an owner. And I know you talked a little bit about what the owner rights are versus the member's rights, but this was a question that just came up again in terms of clarifying the difference between the two.
So the owner versus a member on Teams, as I mentioned, the owner can create it. They can invite everybody in the team. Of course, they have full rights to even determine if the others are going to be an owner or a member. An owner can leave a team. Well, actually, you both could leave a team. Only an owner could edit a team name or description. A team member could not. Only a team owner could delete a team, and a member could not. And only an owner could delete a private channel, whereas a member could not. I can only add a member as well as an owner. Great. Everything else pretty much your members can do.
Great. Now, in regards to messages within Teams, the question is, do you know or can you set your messages to delete after a period of time to auto clear any old messages, or are they just there until the duration and the end of time?
Forever and ever and ever. No, just like with your emails, you can actually archive your messages. Great question.
Now, within Teams, I know sometimes you can go say at a person. So if I wanted to talk to alert you, Bobby, I would say at Bobby Garrity. The person says that, is there a trick? Because sometimes it seems like they've done the at the channel or at the team without success. Is it only on an individual name basis, or can you say at general team or at New Horizons training channel?
You, as I mentioned, you can get a link to the channel or get an email to talk to the whole general channel. But otherwise, anytime you put the @ sign at the top, if your IT has it set up, just like you would pull up a name in your email, this is going to work exactly the same. This is going to show everybody that's in your network.
Great. And when it comes to having meetings on Teams, do you know if there's an ability to mute all in the meeting? Or is it just all, or does the person have to individually mute themselves?
I'm chewing on that one. I've not had to delete everybody simultaneously, so let me look into that one for a second while you ask me another one.
Sure. Let's see here. The question here is, if you have people joining an audio meeting that aren't in the Teams at the time, does it show them as an attendee in the meeting itself?
If they ask me the first part of that?
The question is, if you have people joining via the phone or on audio that aren't in Teams themselves, will it show them as an attendee?
It does, and it shows that they've called in. You can see that it's a phone call into the meeting. And for your prior question, yes, you can mute all.
Perfect. Wonderful. And when it comes to sharing the recorded files within a Teams meeting, can you do that also with someone who's outside the organization, or is it only within the Teams organization that you can share?
You can only show within the general channel that everybody has permission to see, and that's the way you would want it. I wouldn't want anybody to have the ability to push that out to somebody external, because then there's a security issue. They have to be invited to the meeting, or sorry, to the channel.
Great. We have this question is for someone, they are very brand new to Teams. She says that the organization has sent a retention of 7 days on chats and 30 days on conversations. Do you know if the meeting notes taken will also disappear in the same 7 or 30 days that they've set up?
They will, as long as the general channel is alive that you've had the meeting in, it will remain at the top for as long as you have access to that channel.
Great. We still have a lot of good questions here.
You have great questions.
Yeah, a lot of good questions here. Are the meeting notes public to the team or private to the person who created the note itself?
Sorry, I'm muted. They are going to be available to everybody in the team. So I would want to have meeting notes separately outside of that meeting if it's something I didn't want to share with the team.
Great. And just along that same vein, when it comes to taking notes, can anyone add to the note that that is in on the meeting?
They can if you open a whiteboard. You can all type in notes on a whiteboard, and it's a shared collaborative space within a meeting.
And just going back to the recordings here for a second, where did you say that the recordings are stored when it comes to a meeting recording?
Sure. They're going to be stored in the channel that you call that meeting in. Remember, that was a meet now. I did it kind of on the fly, which may not be the case in your real world. You may actually schedule it for the future. So if I schedule it in the, come on, go away. If I schedule it for a future date, I still can tell that meeting where to be stored when I plan it. That comes in from my calendar. Here's a new meeting here. This is for a future one, and I can tell it here exactly where I want what channel I want to put it in. Good question.
Great. Now this question is, and I don't know, you might want to turn on your video for this one. It's about the background to your video. I know that there's ability to blur, but this person is asking, is there a way to add a background? Say you're in, in your kitchen or something, and you don't want folks to see what's behind you. Is there a way to either add a background or to change it while you're on video conference?
Well, we do have the ability to blur it. That's kind of a newer feature, which we're super excited about, because as you can imagine, we have kids sometimes running around in the background, as we mentioned. So you can blur the background. That's a newer feature. And then on the background, the new feature will add you to add also a custom background, like a company logo, an office environment. Look, it just takes the pressure off of you. So yes, those are upcoming, and they're always improving on that. So be watching for that to be continually improved.
Perfect. And then I just wanted to let everyone know, I know we're at the top of the hour, about 5 minutes past the top of the hour. If anyone needs to log off, please feel free to. We'll continue recording for the next few minutes here just to wrap up some last questions. Just wanted to put that out there for those who may need to head off to another meeting. Okay, moving on to the next question is, are there any recommendations on scheduling large group chats? The person says it seems a bit clunky when it comes to Teams, but is there a better way to do it than how you're currently doing it?
Right now, that it kind of is what it is. What you see here, just this one thread, that's what you're going to have, for example, for an org-wide one, which can certainly get lengthy. So that's why you may want to consider having smaller buckets of channels. That's why we can have a multitude of channel options so that you can kind of have smaller teams if you need to. But some organizations have an org-wide one so that they can push out notifications and announcements.
Great. And do you know if team chats and communications are archived?
Yes, you can archive the chats in Teams.
The next question might require a little bit of a demo. The person wants to know, is there a way to click and drag to Teams the way a file, the way you would attach a file in Outlook? I know that you can do that, where if you have a file in a folder, you could drag it to your email. And I think I've done this too also in Teams.
Sure.
If someone just wants to see that process to see if it's the same.
Absolutely. So I'm in the files. I have a few lists here. I'm going to grab one just from my local machine, and I will drag and drop it. Here it is, 3D formula. I'm going to let go of it right here. Give it a second to load, and you'll see it pop in there. It's pretty super cool. There it is.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's so super easy and intuitive to use here.
User friendly.
It is. Oh, this is an interesting question. When working on a file, can you also access the video conference system? Hey, Bobby, I don't know if you heard me or not.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself.
Oh,
yes,
no.
You can share. You can do a screen share of the file that you're in inside of Teams while you're having the meeting. Yes.
So the next question is, you showed us how to initiate a meeting. How do you schedule a meeting in the future and then have it start?
So I would go to my calendar on the left within Teams, and I would click here on the drop down, and my choice is to have a live event right this minute. There's a meet now, or I can schedule a meeting for the future. If I schedule it in the future, it behaves a little bit like Outlook, future meeting. I would add my recipients here just like you would in Outlook, and I have the date and the time. I can tell it what channel I'd like to store that in if I record it, and any details for the meeting. I can then send that out to everybody, and it will show up on their calendar.
Great. And a few more questions here.
Sure.
Can members of a team add channels, or do you have to be the owner?
A member of a team can add a channel. Yes, that's why you want to have some governance. Number of channels per team is 200 for the limit. You can have up to 200 channels. You can have, yeah, so because you can have that many channels, you want to have some governance over that. Yes, they can create them.
Great. We have a couple questions in relation to wikis. One was just going over the wiki again, but another is is there the ability to search within the wiki for something that you're looking for?
Oddly, no. And it's weird because Microsoft gives us such robust search engines everywhere else. But I mean, that's in the pipeline. They know that we want that to be searchable, but at the moment, it's not. So you may want to think about doing some of that in your OneNote environment, because it just is so much more robust. You can have a OneNote environment that you can even share with the rest of your team and collaborate in there. And it's just the more of the full version instead of the wiki. Wiki's really just good for a few notes. It's not quite as robust and not searchable.
And just going back to the wiki that you had created as a sample during our session here, they're asking if the headings that were on the wiki, were they created by you? And does the wiki page apply only to a specific conversation, or is it an overall file?
Good question. It is for the entire team for that particular channel. That's where it's stored. That's who can see it. And I did create everything here. As I hover, you'll see that I have little plus signs where I can add sections. And I did add this from scratch. I can have a conversation about this wiki, but yes, if I add a section here, you'll see a new one.
Great. And can you move or cut and paste a channel from one team to another?
It's a good question. You cannot, but you can move them. You can drag and drop them to rearrange them somewhere, but you can't move them from one team to another.
Good to know, because I was going to say I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah, good to know.
Can teams be populated from an Active Directory, or does it
That
have to be manual?
I do not know that. That's going to be an IT question. You stumped the instructor. IT question.
Perfect. And when it comes to having a meeting and it goes to the recording, can anyone who is part of that meeting start the recording, or does it have to be the person who initiated or set it up?
Has to be the person who initiated it and set it up.
Gosh, we have so many great questions here. I'm just trying to filter on through here.
You're doing a great job, Maya.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Oh, this is an interesting question here. For a private group, which I figure maybe that's a private team, can one channel be limited to administrative personnel to obtain files, and then another channel be made available only to the members of a team for dialogue that the administrative personnel would not have access to?
Absolutely. So remember, we can have within a full team that has full rights, and they're all invited and they all are collaborating on files. You can have sort of a spinoff from that, a private channel just with admins, and have their own 3 tabs at the top. They have their own set of posts, files, and wikis separate from that team.
Great. One last question here before I see that we're heading up to 15-minute mark is, when it comes to using Teams for company-wide communications, is Teams limited in terms of the functionality for publishing? Do you know that if SharePoint or Yammer is integrated into Teams?
Well, it's sort of 2 different questions. If I have an org-wide not sure that I understand the question. If I have an org-wide team, which you certainly can have, that you can publish, announcements and things like that. Yammer is something that I would add down at the bottom separately. It's one of the apps that I can add at the bottom just in general for our organization, or I could also add a Yammer here that would be specific to this team.
Great. With that, everyone, thank you again. We have so many great questions that came in. And again, thank you, Bobby, for speaking on behalf of New Horizons and also fielding all these great questions that we have. Quick reminder, everyone, the recording will be sent out for those who would like to pass this on, share this information, review it. They'll all be there for you. Thank you again for joining us. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Also, human first, technology second, especially during these times that we have here. Appreciate everyone joining us. And with that said, thank you again, Bobby, and you may now all log off.
Thank you, everybody.